Hello, America. I'm Mark Levine, and this is Life, Liberty, and Levine. Welcome. Are we on the precipice of war? A major war? Does it seem like, as a nation, we're ready for such a possibility? Are we ready psychologically? Have our leaders explained much to us? Do we get much explanation from the media in this country at the White House press conferences or on the Sunday shows? Oh, yes, they talk about how many troops are lined up against NATO and that sort of thing. I'm not talking about that sort of thing. And the ideologues, well, they're in full-throated attack. The ideologues who talk about the neocons and the federal contractors. And the others, the isolationists who go on and on about how we're provoking our enemies. War is not about ideology. Foreign policy is not about ideology. National security is not about ideology. The word that describes it best is prudence. Prudence, the wise judgment brought to very difficult decisions and facts and issues. That's what we expect from our leaders. Tell me, does the Department of Defense, with the Secretary of Defense and the head of the Joint Chiefs, do they seem like the very best people in a position to protect this country and safeguard this country should there be a war? How about the Secretary of State? Does he seem like the very best person to use diplomacy to rally our allies and defend off our enemies? How about the National Security Advisor? Do you know who the National Security Advisor is? He was an operative prior to serving in his current position, who was also involved in the dirty tricks to try and take out former President Trump with respect to Russia collusion. How about Congress? Is this not the weakest Congress we've seen in the modern era? Not a lot of smart people in Congress, not a lot of people who look at their country first. You look at our country, ladies and gentlemen, we're at each other's throats. Why are we at each other's throats? Because of this American Marxist movement that seeks to destroy our history, support for our country as it is today, and in our classrooms, on the border, with budgets, violating separation of powers, you name it, just turning the culture inside out. Is Hollywood on our side? Is corporate America on our side? Or are they just too invested in communist China and other regimes that have designs on this country? And the United States military, the infantry, the Air Force, and the Marines and so forth, do you think they're being trained properly? In many respects they are. But what about critical race theory and transgenderism and other events, radical left events that seem to take up way too much of their time and demoralize them? And what about the commander-in-chief? Is he up to the job? The answer to all of this is a disastrous domestic situation facing a grave foreign policy situation. And there's very little prudence involved. And that is a big, big problem. So as we're fighting over the Voting Rights Act, which has nothing to do with voting rights, and the rest of the American Marxist, Democrat Party, media, and academic agenda, none of it has anything to do with strengthening the United States military, our national security, and ultimately our self-preservation. None of it. If we had a real media in this country, you'd understand what's taking place overseas. So we have to ignore the loudmouth ideologues who are endless interventionists and the loudmouth ideologues who seem to believe that hypersonic missiles, intercontinental ballistic missiles, nuclear warheads, stealth fighters, and so forth, once they reach the American border, they stop. They're not a threat anymore. No, we are in a serious pickle here, you might say. Now, whose fault is this? Well, obviously, it's the enemy's fault. Who's the enemy? Well, there's even debate over this. So much of our culture has been bought off by the communist Chinese regime, you can't even say anything like the China virus. You can say the Spanish virus. You can talk about a white dominant society. But of course, when you talk about the communist Chinese regime, that's what it is. But you're not allowed to talk about that. So how can you talk seriously about the threat? When it comes to Putin, there's some kind of a love, bizarre relationship between Putin and a certain percentage of our politicos in this country and media, who seem to think he's a pretty cool guy, he's a tough guy, and so forth. No, he's a killer. He's a killer who killed his way to the top. He's corrupt, and he wants to hold on to power, and he wants to reestablish the old Soviet Union, which was defeated during the Cold War by Reagan and the United States and our allies. Why should we defend the Ukraine? Oh, I don't know. Why should we defend Belgium, Italy, France, Great Britain? They're all the way over there, after all. They're all the way over there. How many wars have started in Lawrence, Kansas? I don't know of any, do you? How many wars? In Joplin, Missouri? None that I can think of. No. The wars are overseas, and they have a way of reaching into the United States. The fact of the matter is, China, Russia, and they're not alone, are building militaries against us. Russia's not building a military against Ukraine. They don't need all that hardware, all that technology, all those troops just for Ukraine. China's not building the biggest navy, killer satellites, and so forth because of Taiwan. They're building them because of us. Us, the United States of America. Do we act as a government like we're serious about confronting this? Do we act as a government like we need to become more reliant on our own manufacturing and our own products? Do we act as a government that we need to secure the border and make sure the United States is safe from within? Do we act as a government that we use our financial priorities wisely, not redistributing wealth, not creating new massive entitlements, not breaking the back of the American taxpayer, but ensuring that our military has everything it needs to potentially fight more than a one-region war? This is very, very serious business, ladies and gentlemen. The hackers and the hawkers and the soapbox loudmouths are not the people to listen to. AOC does not have any experience when it comes to the military, and most of the people in the Senate don't either. But we, the people, one day that may be our children and grandchildren that have to fight. This isn't about hawks. This isn't about doves. This is about prudence. It's about judgment. It's about doing the right thing, which then brings me to Joe Biden. You Democrats, you people in the media, you people in academia, you brought us Joe Biden. You knew damn well he was incapable of doing what a president needs to do for a whole variety of reasons. You knew that he was not mentally fit to be president of the United States. You knew that experientially he's been a disaster when it comes to foreign policy. You are responsible for the man who sits in the Oval Office today. You. You never Trumpers who have a hate on an obsession that requires deep psychological treatment. You are responsible for the man who's in the Oval Office today. As I speak, what is Congress doing about any of this? Nothing. They're chasing down Donald Trump and protesters. They're trying to change our voting system for the worse. They're trying to nationalize what belongs in the states. They're trying to create new entitlements for people who don't work and don't want to work. They're trying to redistribute wealth. They're trying to turn us into a radicalized France. Is that a good idea, ladies and gentlemen? No, I don't think it is. How many of our leaders have gone on television or radio and spoken to us truthfully, in a straightforward manner, about the threats that this country faces? And that's Russia and China. What about Iran? Iran is months away from having nuclear weapons. This is a regime that makes it abundantly clear what it intends to do to us, let alone the Arabs and our allies, the Israelis. You think we can ignore this forever? We have an administration that's bending over backwards, not just appeasing the Iranians, paying them, begging them to come to the table and agree to an agreement that they'll never honor. This is a regime that hates us. They are fanatics. They are zealots. They're not going to be persuaded otherwise. I mean, even mullahs with nuclear weapons, folks, are a threat. This is the situation today. You think America's ready? I think a significant portion of the population's ready, but I think a significant portion of the population is not. So as Joe Biden goes off last week and gets an ice cream cone, as if he's some third grader, And as his people go on TV trashing Republicans as if they're leaders of the Third Reich. And as the media in this country, with so many low IQ, inexperienced, radical leftists dressed up as journalists, not just ignore the threat, fail to provide the American people with the context for the threats we face, we're not ready. We're not ready. You don't have to believe me. Just look at our enemies. They see this as an opportunity, a great opportunity. If not tomorrow, maybe the next day. If not the next day, maybe next year. They see the Biden administration as the perfect opportunity to act. The communist Chinese are going to act in one form or another. Putin is going to act in one form or another. I don't know what they're going to do. But they see the weakness in the Oval Office. They see the leadership of the Defense Department, Milley, who calls the head of the communist Chinese military to tell everything's going to be fine. Don't worry about Trump. We'll let you know if we attack. They see this. They see the pipeline between Germany and Russia and what Biden did. They see our budget when it comes to the United States military, that this administration and Congress are not serious. They saw what happened in Afghanistan, where there's still American citizens behind enemy Taliban lines, as well as our allies. They see our capitulation to the Iranian regime. They see it all. They see weakness. That's why I said over a year ago, who do you think our enemy's rooting for President of the United States? Donald Trump or Joe Biden? I think the answer was obvious then, and it's obvious now.
'Cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that